And here's Herb. Welcome to class. We have a technological problem out at Cinco Ranch, but we're working on it. And hopefully, this is, put it on here. Let me say one more word to him. Amy, come on.
Hello.
Oh, can you hear me? Are we on the air now?
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
See that? Get it?
Just FYI, what are you talking about today? More like history stuff on the movement, or are you going into like what the handout
okay,
is about
hold on.
you got today?
We're going to do this. I'm going to review, put it here. I'm going to review this, and then we're going to talk about
Okay.
No, not this.
Starting in intimacy?
Not this, and not this.
Oh. Okay.
And then Iron
okay,
John.
Yeah.
Yup.
What?
And
He's just telling the students here to
Red
wait a few minutes
shoes.
and they can leave.
Y'all hang on watching this thing. You're getting your money's worth.
Red
Just hold
shoes.
on. And red shoes. Right here.
I guess you got a few more hours you can work on.
Anyway, do you know this book? Okay, well, I just have to teach, and maybe they'll catch on or not. Okay, one of the things I do in my classes,
We got
because
another
I'm a
class in
psychologist,
here at
and
5:30
we change the world by changing individuals. We change the world by taking on issues in PTA, political scene, and all that.
You get it straightened out
But
by
a lot of people,
I know what the problem is.
I like to, the one I can really change is myself. So I bring these books to sort of show you contemporarily where we are in the feminine movement and the masculine movement, the feminist and masculine movement. But I just want to show you some books that, in case there's somebody out there that actually wants to grow and learn and not just get through this class and get their little grade and move on into unconsciousness again, I find that, and really the reason I do this is for you 5% of you out there who actually want to become a whole person and take on this journey of self-discovery to find your gifts and calling and purpose in life, and to have some rancorous mischief unfolding yourself. So let me show you some books that are really good. This is one called The Heroines Journey, and y'all can write these down to give to your parents when they're acting kind of weird. And this is a classic book. It's A Woman's Quest for Wholeness, and it's really a great book. And a lot of my clients, this is Separation from the Feminine. Yeah, move it down there. Identification with the Masculine, Road of Trials. God, look at all this. I won't go through all of them like this. Illusory Boon of Success, Strong Women Can Say No, Initiation of the Goddess, Urgent Yearning to Reconnect with the Feminine. See that right there? And then Healing the Mother-Daughter Split. There's so many issues with mother-daughters, which is a primary issue everyone will have to come to deal with to find our own identity. Finding the Inner Man with Heart, Beyond Duality, whatever. That's it. But anyway, this is a great book for self-discovery and growth and learning. And another one is, Murdoch, Maureen Murdoch. And this is just a classic book, and I read these kind of books over and over again. They're also the kind of book you can pick up and just read a chapter. In school, we always feel like I've got to start the first and the end. You don't have to do that. I've got lots of books that I've read 3 pages, but those pages were exactly what I needed at that time. This is a great book for the feminine. This is Bridge to Wholeness, a feminine alternative to the hero myth. And this is Jean Raffa. I've been at a couple of workshops with her, a great lady, psychologist from Florida. And really about her story, interesting, she was putting on her makeup in the mirror one morning in her bathroom, and this story came to her. Can y'all hear me now? I guess they can't. Anyway, and this story, let me show you. This kind of, hold on. Here it is. Thank you. This kind of fairy tale went through her mind. this silly little fairy tale about a rose and a lily and a rose. So she went back and got her journal, and she wrote that down that morning before she took off for the day. And it was a week or so later, she suddenly realized it was her sacred myth. It was the issues of her own life that were in the fairy tale. And so it sort of came to her when she was, doing this stuff. So this is really her own personal story about the issues of finding her own wholeness as a person. See? And then another one that's just essential reading is this Women Who Run with Wolves. Anybody know this book? Y'all don't know this? You do? And see, this is Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. And it was a 1 million copy bestseller out a few years ago. This is a classic book. I also have a bent for those of you who want to be therapists. And remember, the primary work of being therapists is doing your own work. You can learn all the technique you can, but if you don't do your own journey and work on your own problems and sort out your own integration of polarities, then ultimately you have nothing to give someone else except sort of matronly or patronly advice. But this is a great book, and I wanted to show you one part of this. I just want to read one part of it. And here's what she says in here. Face me here. The material in this book was chosen to embolden you. The work is offered as a fortification for those on their way, including those who toil in difficult inner landscapes, as well as those who toil in and for the world. We strive to allow our souls to grow in their natural ways and to their natural depth. The wildest nature does not require a woman to be a certain color, a certain education, a certain lifestyle, or economic class. In fact, it cannot thrive in an atmosphere of enforced political correctness or being bent into old burnout paradigms. It thrives on fresh insight, self-integrity. It thrives on its own nature. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, a woman-loving woman, a man-loving woman, or a God-loving woman, or all three, whether you are possessed of a simple heart or the ambitions of an Amazon woman, whether you're trying to make it to the top or just make it through tomorrow, whether you be spicy or somber, regal or roughshod, the wild woman belongs to you. She belongs to all women. To find her, it is necessary for women to return to their instinctive lives, their deepest knowing. So let us push on now and remember ourselves back in the wild soul. Let us sing her fresh flesh back into our bones. Shed any false coats we have been given. Don the true coat of powerful instinct and knowing. Infiltrate the psychic lands that once belonged to us. Unfurl the bandages ready for the medicine. Let us return now, wild woman, howling, laughing, singing up the one who loves us so. For this issue is simple. Without us, the wild woman dies. Without the wild woman, we die. For true life, we all must live. Para vida. Let me say this book. This book has many stories in it. And so you can just pick out the story. For example, the myth of the ugly duckling is really about mothering. And mothering is about honoring people to be who they're meant to be and move on. Mothering is about detachment from the start. For remember, our children don't belong to us. They come from the mystery. They go to the mystery. They're just guests. And all true mothers know that you can't possess. For if you do, you kill the life that's within the child. But there's a story on the red shoes, and I was going to share it in a minute, but I'll share it now. I think it's a Grimm's fairy tale. And it's a little girl who lives in the briar, and she's a poor, poverty-stricken girl, and they rut out roots and gourds to eat. And she has these red cloth tied around her feet because she wants to dance. And the queen comes by in her carriage, and she sees this girl and these people out just scrounging around. She sees these red cloth on her feet. So the queen says, ask her what's going on. The mother says, well, she wants to dance, and that's her fantasy, to dance. And the queen says, oh, how wonderful. So the queen takes her off to the castle. and has the royal shoemaker make her some red dancing shoes. Well, the girl gets them, and she starts dancing. It's like all her dreams have come true, and there she is in the castle with all the regal wealth. And she dances all day and into the night. And pretty soon she's dancing up the walls and on the ceilings, and she's dancing all over the castle. And she can't stop dancing. And if you know anything about fairy tales, they have these superlative and excesses in order to make a point. Pretty soon her dancing has taken over her. And that which was her gift is now ruining her because it's running her life. So they go back to the cobbler, and he can't remove the shoes. And they can't figure out what to do, but she can't stop dancing. So she goes back to the... so eventually what they do, as fairy tales often do, they take her to the butcher. And the only way they can stop her dancing is cut off her feet. So they cut them off. And with that, they take her back to the field where she's living with her people, and they drop her off. And her feet eventually grow back. And she, this is fairy tales. Stay with me. You watch this crap on TV all the time, and you think, this is true. It's fairy tale. Can you say the C word on TV here? Yeah, you can't say the S word. I can say that too, but I want to be back and do this again. So anyway, she goes back, and her feet grow back, and she ties the red cloth around. And she realizes that she would rather grovel step by step toward finding her autonomy than have some fantasy take her away where she never gets to grow step by step into her own personhood. See? And the illusion and the fantasy we all have that we'll be swept off our feet, men and women all have it, that, you know, our ship will come in. See, that someone said the two greatest tragedies in a man's life, I guess it's true for anyone, is one is when your dreams never come true, and the second one, of course, is what? Is when they do. And suddenly the journey stopped. So the story of the red shoes is in this book, and it's a powerful story. I often have my clients read it to think and meditate, and she has the story, and then she writes about the story. So that's the red shoes. Now, another great book for men is Richard Rohr and Joseph Martell's book, The Wild Man's Journey. And this is about reflection on male spirituality and rediscovering masculine energy. Richard Rohr is a Jesuit Catholic priest / therapist / speaker. Great guy. I've heard several of his tapes. But this book has some stuff on Iron John, but it's really about... And see, the wild man is not savage man. The wild woman is not savage woman. It's the authentic woman. It's the authentic man. It's who nature intended you to be when you were born, and then we all got socialized, culturalized, religiousized, familyized. You know, our definition, we started putting on these masks and these roles to please mother, please father, please our peers. So we developed this persona. And who's the person behind the mask? Who are you really? And that would be called the shadow. And there's this battle between the persona, who you are, who you think you are, or who you develop to become, versus who you really are. I know in my family of origin, one of the ways I survived the alcoholism and abuse, the stuff that was going on, and we were a really neat, fun family, just didn't talk about feelings, is developing the trickster and the jokester. It's one way you could transcend, fascism and authoritarianism is about being funny. If you ever read the stories of Carol Burnett or Lucille Ball, you ought to read their stories. Most comedians, when you read their story, they come out of some pretty traumatic experiences. And so humor becomes a way to do that. So I can remember growing up, and I was always, most popular and fun guy, with all this stuff through school, and always fun and funny. And of course, it serves me well, my humor. But you see that behind there was a real serious thinking person. And I remember part of why I wanted to get my doctorate is I wanted to honor the part of me that's very serious, because I grew up with just the trickster mask as a survival tool. See what I'm saying? That would be the persona. That would be the image I portray. So what we're all doing is trying to get to the person behind the person we present to the world. And the good question to ask is who is this person behind my mother? Who is the person behind my father? Who is the person behind my spouse, my lover, my friend, who is the person behind me? And that's what individuation is all about. What is the true masculine? What is the true feminine inside me? What does the integration of all that mean in the fullness of my personhood? See, and that's but you don't know what it is, but it's an unfolding journey, and that's why a person who knows themselves, as it was Plato's admonition to know yourself, know thyself, is a person who has more consciousness and doesn't get stuck unduly in related problems or job problems because you know yourself. And so the wild man and the wild woman is really the real you, the authentic you. Let me give you an example. You know the part of you that can be nice at Thanksgiving and a dinner party and behave appropriately, and then the part of you that hates going to those stupid family reunions the whole time, for example. And you see that dichotomy, that paradox, that split? Wholeness is coming to terms with that. And if you don't come to terms with it, then the shadow comes out. You end up coming late to Thanksgiving. You come and you bitch and complain or angry and sarcastic because you're not owning the part that doesn't want to be there. See? So we have the mask that pretends. Well, see, wholeness is coming to terms with that so that you integrate the part that needs to function in society and then the real you behind it. Okay, so this one, and then we'll look at this one in a second, is the Iron John book, a book about men. And this is pretty almost essential reading, I think. See, it's a #1 national bestseller. And when a book's a national bestseller, what do we know about it? What?
A lot of people read it.
Yes. Yes. Say that on the air.
A lot of people connect to it, and that's why.
And the reason they connect to it is because it's touching an archetype. It's awakening something in the collective psyche. So when you go, why is everybody interested in that book? Because it's touching us at a deeper level. And that's, it's kind of interesting to read that kind of stuff and learn about what is everybody reading? Where's the collective psyche going? Why is everybody reading this book and not a book on gardening per se or whatever? And, you can learn about where the collective is going by just looking at the, top films, the top books. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, too. And before I do that, let me share one of the best books I've ever read on relationships. It's called Journey of the Heart by John Wellwood. The Path of Conscious Love. And again, see, it's not too thick. And Wellwood, he and his wife do a lot of work on this stuff. Let me show you. For example, well, I don't want to do this. Yeah, okay, the natural path. There's the instinctual world, the warrior of the heart, unconditional love. And then, hold on, the personal path, the sacred path. For example, taming the monsters, awakening the power of sex, marriage as a mandala, conscious love. Here it is, search for the genuine, powerful male and female. See what I'm saying? Keep it right there, I'll do this. Falling in love, passion as a path. I mean, it's not neurosis when you fall in love. It awakens your depth of your soul, and you'll go through the wonder and pain of that. Breaking the heart open while love must go wrong. I mean, there's nothing like getting you to your true self than a broken heart. To realize you got to take responsibility for your own life. Nobody else, there's no mommy or daddy. There's nobody to fix it. You have to begin to stand in the center of the fire and sit with one's sorrow. I mean, you have to mature. We have to grow up. Back here, please. Conscious commitment, obstacles in the path of relationships, and then developing a larger vision for a relationship. See? So as I've often tell my classes, I don't make any money off these books, but I like to help people. It's fun to share this stuff and sort of help you grow and learn, and particularly of those of you who want to be therapists. follow your interests, follow your passions, and you'll actually, if you have the shamanic call, the call of the shaman to be a healer and to be a helper, your own inner work is where you'll get your greatest strength from. We'll see this in Iron John in a minute. It's actually your greatest strength will come out of your greatest weakness. The thing you've been running from actually holds the power and the key to what you want. But it takes a couple of decades to get settled into life and to dare to begin to get your ego strong enough, food, clothing, shelter, functioning, to begin to dig in and begin to look at one's shadow and one's woundedness, because we go, oh no, I don't want to live with that. And yet our gifts often come out of our woundedness. And I can share that with you at 54. At 44, I kind of knew it intellectually, but you begin to experience this stuff and gain a little bit of insight, very little, but insight. Okay, so we've obviously lost our. They went home, didn't they? Okay. So what we're looking at today is we're going to look at a little of the gender movement. I want to review that, and then we'll look at intimacy and stages of marriage at another time. But this is a good test question, is what are the three waves of the feminist movement? And the first wave, it was around stopping slavery and the temperance movement. And the first wave was about gaining. Actually, it ended. Isn't that funny? It ended in August 26th, 1920. What happened then? The right to vote. It started about stopping slavery and temperance movement, but at the Seneca Falls, it was about securing basic freedoms, and the first wave ended roughly in 1920s when women got the right to vote. And then the second wave, which started about 1960, there were two aspects of it, and one was radical feminism, which was connected with the anti-war and racial discrimination. But it was a reawakening of the feminine mystique and women discovering the power of being a woman and power of feminism. About, I had it over here, I want to see that. Second wave is diverse aims, but it's really about women finding their own personal power and collective power in relationship to men and the society in general. But there's a lot of diversity in that. And then the third wave, so it's 1960 to present, and then the third wave, which our book talks about, was really three different things. Recognizing, celebrating differences among women, that it's okay for everybody to have different views. The second one, which is not up here, is it's about action and not theory. And the third is to improve the connection between men and women. Women and men. Is that clear as mud? Okay. And that's a good test question. And I think it's interesting to know. And then along with that, we'll get back to her in a minute. The two aspects of the men's movement. And, of course, many women would rightly say the men's movement has been the whole problem all along. But there has actually, it's beautiful how yin and yang work, feminine energy, masculine energy, and the women's movement in the second wave caused a backlash or an awakening of the men's movement. And the two parts of the men's movement was the male feminist, was about sensitive males, soft males, men recovering their feelings, recovery of feelings, and it's about supporting women. And then the pro-masculist is about men rediscovery of masculinity. You know, real men. And along with that was the mythopoetic men, a discovery of the deep masculine thought and feeling, hunger for father, poetry, ritual, and story around the Iron John stuff, and the New Warrior movement, and this is going on where men got so feminized that a lot of men, conscious men, growing men, were trying to rediscover their masculine. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. This is an interesting test question too, perhaps. In fact, this is right here. Y'all have this down. And that is, what's the difference between that patriarchy is not masculinity? Patriarchy would be immature and undeveloped masculinity. It's overdoing too much masculinity. Patriarchy is men don't know who they are. It's patriarchy is masculinity without the feminine, or without feelings. Actually, it's masculinity without soul. I remember one time getting off at the old Texas Commerce Bank, which I think is Chase Manhattan building, and you get off. I was speaking to a bunch of patriarchs in a deal on stress, and you get off of this building where the elevator opens. It's right in front of a bakery, and the cinnamon rolls just knock you down. And I went, wow, that's great. What a great fragrance or something, just spontaneously. And all these little toy soldiers, right, in their white suits. Men, the individuals, but have you ever looked at us, how we do down in the business world? Everybody's goose-stepping in uniform, has a little hair a certain way, and the deal, and the look, and focused. And there was no response from about 6 guys in there about the fresh smell of the cinnamon. I guess it was too feminine to note what was going on around us. It was like, they were headed for their mission. And granted, I'm not saying I'm on the high ground and they're on the low ground, but it was just kind of interesting, as opposed to go, yeah, that's great, and get on with their life. But that would be patriarchy gone mad. That often leads to a madness. And how do women support patriarchy? And why would women support patriarchy, say wives and mothers? Push the button.
Because they want a father for their children.
Yeah, but patriarchy in its negative sense, what does a woman get out of that? Men running the show, men running business, men working all day long. Yeah, push that again. What?
They don't have to do as much.
Yeah. They get the benefit of the fantasy of somebody funding the fantasy. The white picket fence, beautiful house, neighborhood, just all your fantasies putting together, as long as, go work and let me play. And create the home, the hearth. And so women have often been, accomplices in a crime, because they get the payoff of the big bucks and the security, and affluent white men making lots of money and stashing it away, and retirement. And a woman, you find a lot of women that don't complain because they're able to get their fantasies fixed. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And it's interesting, and it's like a lot of women need to speak to their sisters and say, this is really interesting, because there's a benefit from patriarchy. The world doesn't stay the way it is because only one group is colluding. It takes two. When you have a troubled marriage, both people are participating. Always. Classically, couple comes in, guy's having an affair, and a difficult thing for the woman to think about is, well, who are you having an affair, or what are you having an affair with? And frequently you'll hear, well, no, what are you investing your time? Well, I talk to my mom twice a day, but I don't know what you're talking about. And in fact, there's that bondage and collusion with her family of origin. She's still connected to them, as opposed to break loose and have their own creative relationship. So in any conflict, there's always two sides going. Often one is more overt and one's more covert. But that's what being a therapist is all about, is looking at that. So a woman caught under patriarchy, what is she willing to have to give up if she wants her man around more, or if they choose to be partners? She has to give up the affluence, or she maybe have to willing to step down a social ladder and maybe herself go to work and share in parenting. See, tough decisions, but these things are evolving all the time. Okay, and then we'll have Gob's a question. But let me just say that here's another good test question. Is from Carol Kelleher's work on reclaiming the feminine and signs of reclaiming the feminine. And that's a good test question, to get you to do, is to ask what bodily healing, satisfaction, a return of that when a woman reclaims her feminine. I guess, did you listen to the tape, Kim? Oh, you did? Okay, great. Cool. That's neat. I started to tell you all that, by the way. You don't even have to come to class. Just go listen to the tape. They're listening to the tape. Because I was thinking you didn't get this, and Elena didn't get this. But did you listen to the tape, too? You got it from Will? Okay. That's fine. But bodily healing, often a return of sleep and doing things with the body, resting, reading, gardening. Being around people you choose, making those decisions of saying no to some, is a sign of return of the inner feminine, Kelleher says. Becoming comfortable with the inner and outer world. So many times women are only comfortable with the inner world and they have to connect with the outer, or they're only comfortable with the outer. Perhaps this is what she means by that. It's where you return to the inner. Like, I want to stay home tonight. What are you going to do? Nothing. And then fourth is dancing to your own rhythm, not the agenda of the collective, family, or anyone else, but finding your own. And then the fifth one is the return of compassion for yourself and others. When a man too, but in this case, when a woman becomes rigid, resentful, bitter, quick, and lost her compassion, is not listening, not connecting, not taking time to be with, whether it's children, neighbor, the person at the counter, it's a sure sign she's disconnected from her feminine. But compassion is a sure sign of reconnected with that. Taking time for people, taking time for connecting with feelings and people that are there. Okay, there's our little review. And let's do the Iron John story. If you have it there with you, I want to read it and then talk a little bit about it. Because sort of what I've done is talked about the return of the feminine and how we might I think I pulled a muscle last night. Let me just read this, and then this is the mythopoetic journey of Return of the Mascot. Iron John is a Grimm's fairy tale, Isenhans in German, and actually there's several stories of this, just like in the book He, which we canned, didn't we? We canned a reading of He, but the Parsifal story, Search for the Holy Grail, is in about 7 or 8 cultures. My daughter in her college studied the King Arthur legends, which are in several different cultures. But let me just read this story and then make some comments on it. And this is how we use story and myth to awaken our psyche toward wholeness and individuation. Once upon a time there lived a king whose castle was right next to a large forest where all sorts of game roamed about. One day he sent a royal hunter into the forest to shoot a deer, but the hunter did not return. Perhaps he had an accident, thought the king. So the next day he sent 2 other hunters to the forest to look for the missing one, and they did not come back either. On the third day, he gathered all the royal hunters together and instructed them, search the entire forest. Do not return until you have found 3 missing men. You sort of see the ego's clever little ways. Well, this didn't work. Let's try this one. Well, let's try this. Let's send all the troops out. But all the hunters, too, like the first 3, never came back. Even the hunting dogs they had taken to the forest were never seen again. From that day forward, no one dared to venture into the forest, nor did they see anything moving except for an occasional eagle or hawk flying above. The forest lay completely still and silent. Now let me say this before I go on, because I know some of you are already thinking symbolically. First of all, nobody knows anything about what this story means, so we're going to speculate. It's a fun thing, like a dream. If you ever have a dream, wake up, nobody really knows what it means. If anybody tells you they do, be very careful. If someone says, well, this is what I think it means, ultimately you have to interpret it. And the fun thing about stories is they have different meanings over and over again. Those of you that come out of the Judeo-Christian model and know sacred stories of Scripture, which not a lot of people do anymore, but those stories can come back over and over again to bring new meaning. They have in my life over the decades, because I see the wisdom, because I've lived into the story. I know what it's like to be swallowed up in the belly of a whale and dumped off in a place I didn't know I was going. As a child, learning the story of Jonah was sort of cute and fun. But in my later journey, I've experienced that. So when I go back and read that old Jewish story, it touches me at a huge level and gives me a sense of meaning, direction, like, oh my God. So this is how the mystery works with you. When you say, hell no, I'm going this way, and the mystery says, I want you in Nineveh, and you're going, no. It's sort of like teaching at the university. I said, no, I'll never do that. Academia, no, no. And the one thing, then suddenly I get a call that says, we want you to come teach. Living in Houston for me was like that. I said, I'll go anywhere but not Houston. 27 years ago, this was my Nineveh. Has anybody ever had that experience? They say the way to get God to laugh using this anthropomorphic metaphor, as if God's a person or a he, which God is male and female, and neither male or female and is both. They say the way to make God laugh is tell God your plans. So anyway, so just to say this as we're going, so the forest lay completely still and silent. What do you think that symbol is? The unconscious, isn't it? The dark forest. It's where we're all headed. For nobody knows what's happening tomorrow. Nobody knows the plans of the shadow and how it unfolds. From that, this state of affairs went on for years. God, that's good. So many times we live for years in the unconscious, don't we? We have problems, things that have gone and died, and they're just out there, and we're not dealing with them. Until one day, a hunter from a distant land asked the king if he could look for game in the royal forest. I won't stop totally, we'll go back to this, but the hunter from the distant land is often a piece of our psyche we've just laid behind. Like, for example, if somebody grows up in an abusive home and say, I got to get away from my father, he was so abusive, and you move away and find yourself, sometime that issue with the father comes back. Or if the father left when you were young, when you were 3, the absent father, and somebody in their 30s and 40s, somehow it comes back from a distant land. I got to come to terms with what the effect that was on my life and how I compensated, or or it could be, well, we'll just look at it, but the thing that comes from a distant land. Remembering what had happened to the missing men, the king was reluctant to grant the request. He told the hunter, I'm very afraid that if you went into the dangerous forest, you would fare no better than the others, and that you would never get out alive. To which the hunter replied, my lord, I do not know the meaning of fear. I will gladly face the danger. There's the warrior, right? Into the forest strode the hunter with his hound. It was not long before the dog picked up the scent of deer and barked for the hunter to follow him. And then the dog ran ahead until he came to the edge of a pool that was so deep he hesitated before trying to cross it. Suddenly, and without warning, a bare arm reached out of the dark pond, grabbed the hound, and pulled him under. When the hunter saw what had happened, he ran back to the castle and got 3 men with buckets to empty all the water out of the pond. They worked hard for many hours, and as the dark waters began to be drained, they beheld a wild man lying at the bottom. His body was covered with hair the color of rusted iron. Iron John. The hunter and his helpers bound the wild man with ropes and dragged him off to the castle. The sight of the wild man caused great wonder and alarm, so the king had him locked in an iron cage in the middle of the courtyard. He forbade anyone under the threat of exile to open the door of the cage, and he entrusted the key to one no less than the queen herself. And from then on, anyone could go safely into the forest. And now the king had a son who was 8 years old. And one day the prince was playing in the courtyard with his golden ball, and the ball bounced into the iron cage. "Give me back my ball," said the boy. "Not until you open the door for me," answered the wild man. "No," said the boy, I dare not do that, for the king has forbidden it." And with that he ran away. The very next day, however, the boy came back and demanded his ball again. Again the wild man said, "Open the door for me." But the boy would not do it. And on the third day, the inevitable third day, the third line of the joke, the third day Jesus rose from the dead. The third day the sun shone. Do you hear the mythic? The third day. Not the first, when you think you got it figured out. Not the second, when you're going to go at it the other way. The third, when some new transcendent thing you never thought about comes into existence. And then on the third day, the king went on a hunt. His son came back again, and this time he said, "Even if I wanted to, I could not open the door because I do not have the key." To which the mild man replied, "It's lying under your mother's pillow. You can surely get it." Upon hearing this, the boy threw all care to the wind, for he really wanted his ball, and he stole the key. The young prince returned shortly and unfastened the lock, but as he pulled the heavy door open, he pinched his finger. As soon as the door swung open, the wild man stepped out, gave the boy his golden ball, and started to hurry away. But the boy was frightened, and he called after him, "Oh, wild man, if you run away, I shall be punished. Please don't run away." Whereupon the wild man turned around and came back. He picked up the boy, sat him on his shoulders, and carried him off into the forest. Simple little Grimm's fairy tale. This story is used by men's groups all around the country these days as a way of sort of recapturing the masculine. Let me let's talk about it a little bit. Just looking at some of the symbols. See, I just love this kind of stuff. As a therapist, when people come in with their crisis, what's fun to do is to not just fix the problem, although sometimes people need, you might need a job. You've been out of work for a year and a half and have no money. No. And sometimes people need a job. They're depressed because they need a job. They need to get over their depression. Well, they may need a job, and somehow it gets you over your depression. People do need help with their problems. But the thing that makes life more rich is to say, what's the meaning of the problem? What's the meaning of the conflict? What is the unfolding story that people are about? What has pulled them down under? What key must they go get? What ball has been stolen away in their life? What wild man or woman lies caged that must be released? What parents must they go against? What is the task at hand that the symptom anxiety, depression, confusion, doubt, uncertainty, relational conflict. Beneath the conflict that brings people to therapy, what is the task that the soul is asking them to embrace in order to grow up and become a person? So all of this is in us. All of this story is not, they aren't real things. They're just about us and who we are. So the first one is the dog is pulled down. And when the dog gets pulled down, what's often that a sign of? It's time to do some work. Who hasn't been through a crisis, the loss of a job? I've been fired from 3 jobs. Hello. Everyone in here probably would have been fired too. But getting fired from a job is one of the essential elements of becoming a mature adult. Not that you need to go get fired. What's another crisis? A divorce. Your parents' divorce. Having an accident. A crisis. The breakup of a relationship. Flunking a course. I remember when I flunked my first course in college. It was English literature. Got a big F. And I love English literature now. But I remember how I was just terrorized. Of course, you know what that happened back when I was in school in 1968, 67. You immediately got your pre-induction physical for Vietnam. I mean, it's like, yeah, scholastic probation, psst, come here. We have graduate school for you in Saigon. So to take the story, when the dog gets pulled down, it's a time to wake up or you'll die. It's time to begin the work. It's the time to start facing the problem you hadn't been wanting to face. See, that's what that means. It's time to face up. And see, it's interesting how the king turns away from the problem rather than facing it over and over. These men go out, they get caught, they get again. He sends this a whole bunch of men out there, they all get caught, and then he lets it go underground for years and years. And then the strangers, that part of us that wants to deal with the problems, there's a part of us that wants to become our true self, that wants to get healed. There's a part of us that wants to come to accept those things we've been running from. The stranger represents that willingness to look at a problem. And the king represents the resistance within us. You see that polarity of opposites? I really want to grow and become myself. I'm so afraid. I don't want to. Just want to go home. Somebody to hold me, somebody to make it safe. I don't want to have to face the unknown and discover my gifts and talents and calling and sacred purpose. So the dog being pulled down, the dog is alert animal. It's instinctual part of us, and it represents a time when we have to begin the work. Dogs actually in dreams, dogs are symbol of the unconditional love of God, that sacred sense of your presence, of who you really are. And when our true self gets pulled down, and you say, I can't take this anymore. I don't care what it costs me. I've got to stop pretending there's no crisis because the essence of myself has been pulled down. That's what the dog represents. And then he goes and he gets the men that come back and they start emptying the pond. What could that be about? Emptying a pond bucket by bucket. How about, one way to look at it is getting at the bottom of things. Getting at the bottom of things. Some people think it's emptying the tears of the grief of life. Some of this may be a little heavy for some of you, but I think not. Some of you have already been there, of where you're discovering that there comes a time we have to get to the bottom of your grief. The only cure for sadness is grief. The only cure for loss is tears. Now see, a man's path to his true self is often through his tears. But remember, in the patriarchal world, men can't cry. And so you see that split cycle. So what do men do? They stuff their feelings with eating and drinking and workaholicism, anything to avoid the abyss of loneliness and sadness that is inherent in the human experience. So when your life becomes, so emptying the pond, watch this, bucket at a time, is the slow, arduous work of self-discovery. It's grinding one bucket at a time. It's not heroic. When a person says, I don't want to go to college, I've got to work and it's going to take me 3 or 4 years. I don't want to empty the pond to get to the bottom of my interests and passions and curiosities. I don't want to do that. It's too much time, too much labor. See, and anyone knows that, particularly if you're, raising kids and working or doing, working full time, getting a degree is difficult. That's why I have so much admiration for you guys. All these students out here, my gosh. No matter what age you are, that you're willing to bucket by bucket. The other great myth, just to throw it out, is people come to therapy and they think in 4 or 5 sessions they're going to get this worked out. And, it may be a couple of years. And I tell people, I say, whether you come see me once, if you can't afford once a week, how about twice a month? How about once a month? It's going to take time. Read some things, get in touch with your dreams, come back with your feelings. Take time. What if you take time over the next 3 or 4 years to really pursue something? An art, a gift, a talent. People say, I just want to learn in a couple of weeks, couple of months, when it takes time. You see how that goes against the whole American ethic and collective? Quickaholic spirituality, quickaholic personhood. It doesn't exist. So in this story, it's getting down to things. And the key represents what? Getting the energy back. For the man, the masculine energy. It's interesting. Let me share a few things about it. What is the wild man? The wild man is the essence of masculine energy, one's inner calling, one's instincts, one's sense of separation to be on one's own journey. That represents the wild man. The king might represent the collective persona, doing all the proper things, and yet he hasn't integrated his instinct. To put it another way, the king is a king and he's not a person. He's identified with being a king. I am a king, as opposed to I'm a person with multifaceted aspects to my life. And so it's about the king and the wild man coming together. And so the wild man comes up and they bring it in and cage the wild man. And the wild man is your true self. It's not savage man. It's not brutal man. A man who's savage and brutal and killing and hurting is half a man. It's just a boy with adult power. A true man is never savage. A true man is a gentle man. In fact, I'll show you this. This is I shared this with another class a couple of years ago, and people liked it. This comes from my own family folklore. This came from my great-grandfather, and it came from and my grandfather carried this around in his wallet. And my father, when my brother and I were in college, actually high school, he made a little plaque of this. And I don't know where it came from. This is sort of Herb Agan's story. And it's a little adage, be a man. It's been a mantra for my life to kind of, what does it mean to be a man? Be a gentleman. This won't be on the test. Be a gentleman. Be a man of high integrity. Never hear that word spoken, do you? Integrity? Gee, my dignity. When do you hear these words on TV and the sitcoms? And integrity, of course, means what? Integration, individuation. Don't be split. Have your stuff in a pile. Get it together. But all of you have some of this. You either got it from father, just talking to men men got from father, coach, Sunday school teacher. Often somebody, minister, somebody, somewhere, often gives us models with which to get started through life. But the wild man it's not just about being a gentle king, but it's finding the essence of life. I find women appreciate a man who has his masculine energy, a man who can set a boundary, who can separate, who can stand in the fire, in the center of the fire. A woman tends to trust a man. Another man trusts a man who can stand in the center of fire. Okay, so the key, so the wild man is this masculine energy about separation, calling, and instinct. And the key represents getting his energy back. What did I say? I had pond, P-O-N-D, and I had dog, pulled down. And then our pond. And the key, we're just kind of going through these symbols. It's the desire of energy is with the mother. There's two things about this. And one of the things is you have to leave mother to become a whole person. This is men and women. You have to go against the unctions of mother, father, culture, tribe, and do what you want to do and go steal your energy and power. Because if you spend your whole life just pleasing your caregivers, maybe you didn't please what was written within. And every man knows that if he's still trying to make his mother happy when he's 30, 40, 50, 60, and the mother could be long dead, but, oh, I'd never do that because that would hurt mother, is only half a man. He's been castrated. He lost his power. And it could be mother church. It could be mother corporation. It could be alma mater. See, there's madre. Mother comes in many forms. And the man who's only going to try to make mother happy, mother church, what he does is he doesn't bring newness and freshness and creativity to the world. He doesn't bring new ideas and say, this thing needs to change. Let's stop doing that. Mom, I know that's the way you would do it, but I'm not doing it that way because I'm not your son. I'm your former son. And I must follow what goes on inside of me. See, that kind of energy. So the key represents him finding his own power back and, as it were, breaking the rules and not living out just to be a pleaser. So the key is finding his own power. And what do men do when they can't find their own sacred power, purpose? They will pass it on to a woman. And how many men say, well, my job in life is to make my wife happy. My job in life is to make my kids happy and to make everybody happy. And see, so many men have new, fresh ideas that they don't even acknowledge because somebody else has the key. And ladies, you have no idea what many men have to come to terms with in saying no to mother. Because it'll break her heart. And a woman with a broken heart often is ready to become a woman and stop living out her fantasies for her son. Much of the work I do in therapy is men beginning to think their own thoughts and stop just trying to please the feminine around. And in the new warrior work, these weekend work, much of the work that men do is around coming to terms with shame and guilt for going their own path. And it can be as simple as, I don't want to be a Roman Catholic anymore. I want to think new thoughts, new theologies, new way to integrate my spirituality. Another great one is Whiskey Lady. Men turn to Whiskey Lady and they suck on the bottle, the nipple. And that's how they soothe their guilt and shame from pursuing their own inner path. Because the fear of, if I go my way, it'll just kill her. Well, look at the cost of that. And so many men, if I pursue my own inner way, they might fire me at the job. And yet your inner way may be what the job needs in order to get some new ideas and new freshness. So the key represents leaving mother and breaking the rules and say, and how many students I've seen over the years saying, I really don't want to pursue this line of education. I want to go this way, but my father and mother will just, will freak out. And I say, well, maybe they have to freak out. Maybe they need to grow and stop seeing you in their image and let you be who you are and not have you be who they're not. For good or ill, the greatest effect on children is the unlived life of the parent's personality. And so many students out here they go off to college and they start to get a degree, and you're learning, but the parents quit learning. They say, well, I'm too old, I'm not going to learn. You go learn and succeed and find your talents because I'm not going to find mine. That's a huge setup. See? And sometimes you have to break loose and say, now, you're not going to determine my life. I'm going to determine it, and if you want to be friends, we can have a rich life together. But I'm not living it out to you, although I deeply appreciate your involvement and investment in me. But if you can't support me anymore, fine. I'll find a way to do it. And then we're the girl with the red shoes, groveling. See? And how many people I've met that doing 2 and 3 jobs just to get a degree, and people who do 2 or 3 jobs just to pay for therapy and workshops. It's incredible stuff. But that's how you become a human being, is by finding the key to your own wild man, wild woman energy. The other thing, and this is interesting, is the key for the man lies in the feminine. Now, what does that mean? Let me throw this in because I had written this down. Finding your own power is about keeping a secret. That's cool. Once you have some secrets your parents know nothing about, you're really finding you're growing up. That's cool. You need to have a life that they're not involved with. Secrets, breaking the rules, essential for becoming. So the key also is a man finding his own masculinity lies in the feminine, which means a man has to get in touch with his feelings. And that has to do with his sadness or grief. And also it has to do with his rage, which is all sort of the same. It is the same thing. And in the midst of that he'll find his joy. And that which animates him. And in getting in touch with his feelings, remember, because he learned how to think, he'll actually find his purpose. So the key represents a lot of things. A lot of things. Let me see, I have a few more here. And so what does the ball represent? Okay, let me say this. So the boy is 8 years old, and that used to be called the age of reason, when a boy has emerged from his reflective innocence, and now he's beginning thinking for himself. McFly, hello. Frequently I tell in counseling parents of teenagers, and I said, I hate to tell you this, but your 16-year-old son, you really can't control him. 14-year-old daughter, she's pretty much got a mind for herself, a mind of her own. And if you think you're going to coerce, manipulate, seduce, shame someone into behaving like you want them to, when they've been raised to think for themselves and now they're doing it, you got lots of crises coming. But so the kid has reached the age of reason and thinking. So he's playing with this golden ball, the young prince. And what does the ball represent? His own wholeness. Anytime you see a symbol of a sphere, his own wholeness, his purpose. It's his wholeness. It's a symbol of becoming himself, his true self. For us, it's the symbol of becoming yourself, the wholeness, the ball. I want my ball back. I want it back. I need to pursue my interests, my passions, the things that have been put inside of me. I need to become who I am. Give me my ball back. You're not getting it till you get me the key. That's just a beautiful scene. It's a silly little story, hundreds of years old, German story. But the symbol is powerful. Now, interesting, when he finally gets the key and opens it, remember what happened to his finger? He pinched it. That is powerful symbolism, because here it is. This is when the good news and bad news. Good news, you get your ball back, but guess what? You don't become a whole person without some pain. It's going to cost you something. You're going to have to live with the rejection of parents who at one time you couldn't live without it. Maybe. I don't know. You may have to live with friends misunderstanding you. You may have to live with wound and suffering and hurt and doubt and shame and confusion and sadness. You don't become a person without some pain. You don't become a person without a struggle, and you don't go through a struggle without pain. It's like facing up. It's someone in a marriage that is long since dead and incapable of being recovering, and to say, we got to come to terms with this. I mean, who wants to come to terms with breaking up something that has worked, but has no longer worked? So you either have the pain of staying in or the pain of getting out, but you still have pain. Carl Jung said there is no urge to consciousness without pain. And see, to say that to your wonderful faces, everybody looks so innocent out there on TV, all it's just kind of going through life. If I just do what I'm told, I'll get to where I want to be. And they said I need a degree, and a degree helps you get a job, and I'll be one of the 22% with a college degree, adults in Texas, and then I'll be able to get a job. And somehow I can skirt through this life and never get my finger pinched, trying to find my wholeness. Well, bearer of bad news. The good news is you find your wholeness. The bad news is it comes dearly with a price. Have you all discovered that, some of y'all in here? Yeah. And see, I'm not raining on your parade. I'm trying to say it takes so much courage to become a person. It takes so much courage to pursue an interest, to follow a dream. It takes so much courage to fall down and pick yourself up again. I mean, I frequently tell people, congratulations for coming to counseling. Come tell a total stranger, invest in time and money. Take the time and trouble to find out who you are. What courage to face up to one's grief, to accept a loss, whatever. It takes courage to do that. So the ball represents the wholeness, and that he must find and pursue. And so he lets out the, he gets his finger pinched. Oh, interesting, in another part of the story, it wasn't in this one. There's another version of this. The boy goes back to the pond, and he sticks his finger in that's wounded, and the tip of his finger turns gold. And I've heard it said that that's symbolic of your wound is where you'll find your gold. The thing you've been running from is the thing that actually will bring you your greatest power and greatest gift. See, some of the struggles of my own childhood got me seeking, asking, looking, knocking at a very early age, because I went, this just hurts too much. Is there more? Is there better? And see, that woundedness and insecurity and stuff, it got me on a journey of trying to connect with a creator and find the symbolic world of my faith. And then all the wounds got me into counseling and seeking and searching. And I know I haven't gotten together. All I know after all these years is how untogether I really am, how screwed up I am. But there's been a lot of flowers to pick along the way, a lot of gold to find in your wound. And with some bit of ADD and not being able to study like everybody else, I've had to find other creative ways to study and to learn and to make it and put it together. But along that path, I've discovered a lot of things. So the thing you're running from, the cut in the finger, is often where the gold is when he touches the water. And then we talked about the forest being the unknown, and that's where we're all headed, isn't it? How lovely, into great unknown of the nowhere, the opaque unknown of the nowhere. The problem in life is not the pain of the present or the guilt of the past. I'm telling you, the greatest problem is, where are we going? And that's why it takes so much courage to reflect and take a step into the unknown. And so the last scene is, interesting, the wild man comes out, and remember, he's not as mean as we think. He's actually very, very gentle, isn't he? And sometimes when we get in touch with our deeper feelings and that chthonic part of me that's been waiting for me to attend to it, Herb, what do you want to do? What do you feel like you must do? Actually, I find that's very gentle. I have discovered in the last few years, I can advance or retreat. I'll go hear a lecture, and if I don't like it, I'll get up and leave. I get up and leave movies, get my money back most of the time if I don't like it. But the ability to honor what that inner world is, that the wild man is much more gentle. Because, see, it's really your true self. It's not savage. It's your true self. And then the last scene ends with the boy being carried on the shoulders of the wild man into the forest. Now, what we see there is the integration, don't we? The boy represents the prince, who also represents the king. The proper role of society is now wedded with his true self, the wild man. And Richard Rohr, in his book, talks about the boy on the shoulders represents insight and vision, connected with the instinct and the vitality and the energy of the masculine. So there it is, isn't it? Insight, wisdom, thinking. If it's against the law, don't do it. If it's going to hurt you or somebody else in a mean-spirited way, don't do it. Think about these things. But for goodness sake, follow your passion, your interest, your instinct. And so you see the wedded of the two, the boy on the shoulders of the wild man. Iron John, see, has found his integration. And that's kind of the power of that story. Together, they go off to the adventure of the forest and probably beyond into the unknown. So see, that kind of energy just kind of stirs me up sharing that. But that kind of energy, you can see why a lot of men nowadays would relate to all of that. I think the thing that is so sad is when I see men without passion, and men without laughter, and men without tears, and men without joy and fun. You see men with just blank faces doing their duty. I'm the king. I'm in charge here. And they haven't found their feelings. And so they're half people. So that's an idea of some of this stuff. I wanted to share this with you, not intellectually, but sort of emotionally, so we could kind of connect with the issues of those visceral things from which we live. We ultimately do what we feel in life. Okay, we're going to, don't stop just yet. Don't turn that light on just yet. We'll get together next time. I'm going to look at 4 principles of relationships that James Hollis talks about that I think will help you understand before we look at intimacy. But that's what we're going to look at next class. And thank you for coming. Bye-bye. See you.